What's going on, guys? It's Matty Milligan, and today you're in for a rude awakening, okay? Because I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm going to be completely blunt. No one's coming to save you, all right? There's no magical force. There's no person out there. There's no one coming to save you. So whatever life situation that you're in right now, the only person that's going to pull you out of that if you're in a bad situation and take you to the next level is yourself. I want to use myself as an example, and let me just tell you a quick story about myself. So growing up, I wasn't always the most confident person. I would look at other people who were very charismatic, right? I looked at other people who had things, and I could just tell that they had kind of a sense of superiority in some cases, right? But more so, they just were very confident in themselves. They had that self-esteem. And I was always very envious and actually jealous of those people when I'd see them have self-esteem. And I'm like, oh man, like, how do I get to that level myself? And so I tried all sorts of exercises growing up. I would try going out and talking to people. I would try and just go out and learn all sorts of new things. And the funny thing is, like, when I would set myself a goal and actually achieve that goal, I would get a little crumb of self-esteem, right? I would be like, oh man, I can't do this. And then sure enough, miraculously, I would actually accomplish that thing. And I'd be like, wow, like, that thing happened. How did it happen? Oh, that's because I did it myself, right? I didn't rely on anyone else to give it to me. And I just see this generation of entitlement right now, right? All these people think that they deserve these things, right? They're entitled to own all these things. They're entitled to all the money that they want. They're entitled to these big homes. They're entitled to all these fast cars. They're entitled to having as much sex as they want. And when I see these things, I'm like, nah, dude, you don't deserve crap, okay? If you want something in life, you have to go out yourself and actually earn that thing. And man, throughout this whole pandemic, I've seen it escalate even further. I mean, you see it with universal basic income. Here in Canada, they have CERB, so if you lost your job or you couldn't work, yay, you get $2,000 a month, and yay, great for you. Like, you did nothing and you just got a bunch of money for doing absolutely nothing. And so when I see that happen, I'm just like, man, like, you can do that. You can give people money, but they're not going to get self-confidence when you just give them things, right? If I just hand you a bunch of money that you don't deserve, sure, you're going to be richer, but you're not going to have that confidence. You're not going to have that self-esteem. And that, to me, is the one thing that can't be bought, right? That's something that you earn gradually over time, right? Whether it's setting yourself goals and actually achieving those goals, whether it's going out there, maybe you want to acquire a skill, right? I talk a lot about becoming the attractive character. I talk a lot about social media marketing. I talk a lot about copywriting, right? If you want to actually go out there and achieve those skills and make something of yourself, there's nothing holding you back. But I'll tell you what, there's no one out there that's actually going to come and just give you that skill, all right? You have to actually put in the time and dedication to actually go out there by yourself and actually learn that skill. And I remember one of the first times I heard about self-reliance, I was like, oh, this seems very interesting, right? You hear about this guy, Waldo Emerson, and he had this whole book on self-reliance. But for me, when I read that, I'm like, okay, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Like, let me go and investigate this further. And so I found all sorts of things, right? I remember the book Walden by Henry David Thoreau is the perfect example. It's basically just some dude who writes about himself living in the forest, basically, and he just talks about the economics of that. He talks about dealing with other people and just relying on himself for, not just the financial stuff, but obviously surviving. He's basically cooking all of his food. He's building his own building, his shelter, and he's relying just on himself. And by doing all of those things, out of it, he actually gets self-confidence. And so I think I just see a lot of people out there, like, hoping and praying that some magical person or force is just going to come out there and hand them all this money, and they're going to hand them all this self-esteem. And it's like, no, that's not going to happen, right? And when I look at people out there, like, when I look at the government, like, the government's only going to prop you up so much, right? Maybe they'll give you your $2,000 CERB check, and that's great, and that keeps you going. But honestly, I mean, throughout the pandemic, when it first started, I could have easily just been like, oh, well, like, so much for my business, I'll just take these $2,000 CERB checks. But I'm like, you know what? If I do that, I'm going to come out at the other end actually worse off than I was before. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tough it out. I'm going to live a little bit easier. I'm just going to hustle my buns off, right? And I'm going to come out of this on the other end actually better than I was going into it. And that's exactly what happened. But you know what, one thing is crazy is that by doing so, I actually made more money than I've ever made before. And I actually got hit with a ridiculous tax bill last year, right? And I had to pay it in full. I remember when I first saw the number, I was like shocked. I'm like, man, like I don't want to pay this, but I'm just like, all right, whatever, dude, suck it up. Like this is kind of the tax that you pay for being self-reliant, right? And I'm sure that money may go and actually help out some other people, probably not, to be honest, but maybe it will go out and help some other people. But when you rely too much on other people, right, when you become dependent on them, right, that person or whatever that force is, they basically own you, right? So if you're working in a corporation, you're relying on that corporation to help you out, cool, man. If you're relying on the government to help you out, cool. If you're relying on someone else to help you out, cool. But keep in mind, you're giving up all your power to that other person. If you really want to dive deep into dependence and interdependence and independence, I highly recommend you read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Absolutely goes in depth onto this, right? And I'll give you a quick synopsis of that chapter right now. It's essentially this: you can be dependent on other people, right, to a certain extent, right? Or you can be completely independent of other people in the system. Or you can be dependent and then have a little bit of dependence on the system, which is interdependence, right? And I think interdependence is kind of the perfect sweet spot. Most people start at independence, they move into too far the other way into independence, and then you have to kind of move yourself just a little bit back over into a place of interdependence, right? And so it's like, look, you can pull, like I might do this one day, right? You can pull off a full Jeremiah Johnson if you want to, right? You can move into the mountains and in the forest and just leave society, and that's absolutely fine. But I think there's still a little bit of dependence that you need to have on society, right? And more so that interdependence that I was just talking about. And I feel that there's so many people out there who, in the Western world right now, because we've lived such a good life over the last 50 and 100 years, like we have a higher standard of living than all these third world countries that are out there. And people just think that it's going to be like that forever. And I'll be honest with you, right? Like that's not going to be happening forever, okay? I can see the gap between the rich and the poor is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So you're seeing the middle class gradually completely disappear. You're seeing these richer get richer and you're seeing the poorer get poorer. So do you want to become that person, right, who's relying on the system too much and is getting poorer and poorer and poorer? Or do you want to suck it up? Do you want to go out there and hustle? Do you want to go out there and work, right? And then you can become that rich person. And the thing is, by becoming actually rich and one of those rich people, becoming dependent and being self-reliant, you will be able to help so many more people, all right? If you're poor and you don't have any money and you don't have any resources, you really can't help anyone else, right? You've probably heard of this before, but when planes are going down, right? When planes are actually about to crash, they drop all the little oxygen masks. What the flight attendants tell you to do is put on your own mask first, right? They don't tell you to put on your kids, your friends, or the person next to you's mask first. They tell you to put on your own mask. And then by doing so, you're good to go. Now you can help all those other people out, all right? So I don't want the excuse that you can't do this, all right? There's so many resources out there. I always get so upset when people tell me that they don't want to read a book. They don't want to pay $20 for some book to actually learn a skill. And it's kind of a disgusting way of thinking, because people think that watching an episode of TV, like they think watching an episode of Grey's Anatomy, they're going to get more out of an episode of Grey's Anatomy than they would be if they went to Indigo, spent $20, bought an actual book, and kind of learned a skill out of that by doing it themselves. Most people, to be honest, are way too lazy to even complete a book. The completion rate for completing a book when people actually buy it is like 95% of people who buy a book don't actually read that book from beginning to end. In fact, I think 99% of people probably won't even get past the first page, right? So one habit you can develop yourself if you want to become self-reliant is reading, right? There's so much information out there, right? I personally, over the last few years, have read over 1,000 books, okay? Do you think that I'm better or worse off than I was before that, right? As opposed to someone who might just be watching TV all the time and listening to mainstream media and just hearing all sorts of propaganda that's making them rely more and more and more on the system. Or you can be like me, where you go, okay, you know what? There's a lot to learn in these books, right? Because most of these self-help books that you read, most of these business books that you actually read out there, what the author has done is they've spent their entire life, right, in one specific aspect or one specific area of knowledge, all right? And they become a master in that. They've dedicated their entire life to that. And then what they do is they're like, oh, I'm gonna just take the best parts of that, give you the main thing, distill the true knowledge, the best parts, and just give you that in a book format. But most people, again, they don't see it like that, right? They're just like, oh, I got to spend 20 bucks and then I got to invest all this time reading the book. And when I hear that, I'm just kind of like, man, like I wish, you could kind of see the world that I see it, right? And so I really recommend that right now you just essentially take control of your own life, right? Stop relying completely on the system, all right? Start working towards something. Set yourself a goal, right? Decide right now that you're going to become the master in something, all right? It's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take a lot of discipline. It's going to take a lot of determination and dedication. But I deeply believe that you can really just do almost anything you want. Not necessarily anything, but you can do almost anything that you want. And you have to, over time, just continuously keep thinking about that thing, continuously keep practicing that one thing, and then gradually over time you can become a master in that thing. And by becoming a master and mastering these little micro skills, you get little chunks of confidence and self-esteem, and that has the snowball effect. Whereas at the beginning you might have no self-esteem, you get a little chunk, and gradually over the time that grows. And man, once you have that self-esteem too, like once you set yourself a goal and you accomplish it, you're going to be like, oh wow, like I accomplished that goal. Okay, what's the logical next thing to do? Like, let's set another goal for myself, or let's set something else that I could actually accomplish. And I really just want, people to be happy, but I feel that they're trying to get their happiness by living up to other people's standards, right? I think that too many people care what other people think way too much, and instead of understanding what they value, they look at what society values, and part of that is like they rely on that way too much in their values, where they're not like, what do I truly value, right? And so by doing that, man, like you can literally do absolutely anything. So number one point of advice is, look, no one's coming to save you, right? I heard this in this song when I was younger. I listened to this. It was this album. I think it was from this guy, this producer I used to listen to named Mediocre, and he had this album called Leo versus Pisces, and there was this song by this dude Denizen Kane, and it was basically just a spoken word poem. It was the first thing. He's like, simply put, no one's coming to save you. So again, I want to be that person to you that when I heard that song 20 years ago, I want to be that person that you listen to right now, being like, look, no one's coming to save you, right? Turn off YouTube, start thinking of what you can accomplish, and really just start focusing on that one thing, start working towards that one thing, and over time, I deeply believe that you can become less reliant on society, more reliant on yourself for self-confidence. If you want to improve your health, no one else is going to go out there and work out for you, right? No one's going to move your body and get you back in shape. The only person that's going to do that is you, by learning how to work out, learning more about nutrition. If you want to learn how to make more money, so many resources out there right now. You have the internet at your fingertips. You can learn absolutely anything that you want to learn. You can be like Neo, plugging yourself into that machine, and you're uploading all this knowledge and data into your brain and becoming better over time. So hope you really liked today's video. If you did, I want you to like, subscribe, and I want you to hit the bell notification so that you're notified every single time I drop a video. And I will see you next time. Be blessed and be grateful.